You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is Damian Stefaniuk. He's going to talk about a new concrete battery that delivers 10 times the energy boost and turns buildings themselves into giant power banks, which I think is really cool. He's a research scientist at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So, we'll go through that. So welcome, Damian. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Richard.
Yeah. So how could this possibly work? And is concrete, from what I understand, it's not conductive. How does this battery work?
So basically, first step to make it happen, we had to turn and make concrete conductive, electrically conductive. And usually you do it by adding to the non-conductive material some conductive phase that is interconnected. But what is also very important in our case, we use a special material, not that special because it's just a carbon product, nanocarbon black. But not only it assembles in 3D connected networks due to its hydrophobicity, but also it has very high specific surface. So it can not only make make concrete electrically conductive, but also accommodates the architecture of supercapacitor, and which is maybe a magic word, but it's essentially storing energy, electrical energy, like a battery.
How do you dope the without going into proprietary work? How do you dope the concrete mixture so that when you pour it, it has the right alignment, the right shape, it'll have the right properties that you want?
So at first we were creating nothing else but carbon ink, and the procedure was actually possible like 4,600 years ago by Egyptian and Chinese ink, where they were basically adding Arabic gum polymer to disperse carbon black in water and then creating an ink. In our case, we just at first were using, of course, with more sophisticated chemicals we are using nowadays, but basically creating that dispersed carbon in water, we were adding to regular cementitious material and mixing it. That was our actually first approach, which we over the last few years, we simplified it, and currently we are mixing a dry mix of simple additives, which is cement powder, any aggregate, and this nanocarbon black, and then after that just adding water, and as a result we are able to simplify and mix it as any regular concrete, just with one additional dry ingredient.
If you mix it well, it's uniformly conductive.
Yes, the beauty of it is that chemical processes in this case are extremely repetitive, which means that no matter what mixing procedure we use, no matter who is going to be the user mixing it, and we obtain each time the same. That's actually the beauty of concrete, that everyone around the world can, in simple terms, of course, following certain procedures and avoiding certain mistakes, but using very simple repetitive process, we actually shown that we obtain a very homogeneous dispersion of those carbon particles, just due to its hydrophobic nature and hydrophilic nature of a regular cementitious slurry.
Why not make the blocks conductive and then make the mortar less conductive or conductive in a different way, so the capacitance maybe occurs over the surface area of where the block meets the mortar? Would that be used?
Actually, the beauty of our electron conductive carbon concrete technology, CSHub, is that our supercapacitor works, of course, on a specific surface, but of that carbon black within the pore space. As a result, our supercapacitor, we call it bulk supercapacitor, because basically that internal porosity on a nanoscale level, when the electrolyte infiltrates, basically the specific surface comes from that internal space. So essentially, it doesn't really matter whether our electrode is in a shape of a cube. It has more complicated structure, because that essentially what really matters is the volume bit.
Oh, what happens at the end of a block when it meets the mortar then? Is that like an area of different capacitance Because now you truly do have, a gap of very different materials.
Yes, actually, in general, our ECCube technology is able to store electrical energy through architecture of supercapacitor. And not to get into very technical details, supercapacitor is composed of two electrodes, in our case, our conductive concrete, and in the middle, in between, there is a separator. That separator is basically can be treated as actually mortar because it has to just be non-conductive and porous, which mortar normally is. And as a result, that single cell composed of two electrodes and separated by separator, that's our single supercapacitor cell that can, depending on the electrolyte, carry between 1 to 3, 4 volts. And then when we start connecting them in series or in parallel, that's how we can exceed those 1-4 volt limit and connected basically cells in series. So as you see the wall where there are single bricks and in between there are mortar layers, there's nothing else but those kind of separators in between and also current collectors on both sides, which basically structurally can deliver any in the theory any power or voltage depending on the volume and number of layers in between these, as you mentioned, those mortar joints.
So where does the power generation occur? You have the building sitting there. How do you power up the blocks in the first place? How does it happen?
That's an excellent question because yes, sometimes our technology is confused with kind of technology that can deliver power. But yes, as you mentioned properly, our technology just stores that electrical energy. So we need a source, and that source can be any electrical source currently available. Usually we aim towards renewable energy source like solar panels, so wind turbines, tidal waves. So whenever there is that intermittent energy supply, when let's say sun is available and delivering power, we use that energy, store it within our technology, and then we can deliver it to any appliances whenever needed during the night or managing different peaks during the day and night. Not only renewable energy can be used for that, any energy from the grid, if there is any additional supply in the grid or the energy is at certain times of the day more expensive, we can store that excessive amount and then distribute at other times to manage energy peaks.
What about the base of the block that sees the sun? Could you dope the surface of the block so that it could be a little solar cell in itself? Then the energy doesn't have to go anywhere and it goes right into the block matrix to be stored.
Our technology itself at this point should not do it, but there are other technologies which basically they create those very thin films of solar panels which are kind of glued to facades of the building, and basically then you have direct input of solar energy through those thin films attached to the concrete wall, which can directly power those walls and distribute energy further.
Yeah, maybe that's a good thing because the capacitance is happening right there in the block. If you married, thin films, you could pick up, I don't know how much you could pick up, but maybe would there be enough, you think? Like, have you done calculations, see if it would make a material difference in how much energy you could store just from the sun alone on the building?
Yes, definitely. Because the beauty of ECCube technology is that it scales linearly with the volume. And even though the energy density, which we can store, is relatively low compared to traditional batteries, when we imagine how much volume of concrete we use worldwide and in our structures, those tremendous volumes can really store significant amounts. In our current, let's say 1 year ago, I would say, if you imagine a residential house as the simplest example, and the residential house has around 60 to 80 meter cube of concrete, and just half of it 1 year ago was sufficient to meet the daily residential need of that house. At this stage, when we were able to boost the energy density by a factor of 10 due to application of more advanced mixing technologies and organic electrolytes, at this point, just around 5 meter cube out of those 80 in our residential house is sufficient to power residential need of around 10 to 20 kilowatt hours. That's a tremendous achievement. And as a result, yes, that could store enough energy from those solar panels on your roof or on the facade through those thin films you mentioned.
For a house, how much could this store, like the equivalent of 1 day's use, or how much could it store?
At current level, we can store more than 2 kilowatt hour per cubic meter. So if you, let's say, would like to store 10 to 20 kilowatt hour, which is daily residential need across United States and Europe and so on, that's around, as I mentioned, 5 to 10 cubic meters of concrete.
Well, I was saying a house, let's say it's 30, what would be like a decent sized house, like a 3-bedroom. Here it would be maybe 1,500 square feet, which would be what, like it's like the 30 square meters or something, or 20 square meters?
Yes, the estimate is around 30 to 80 cubic meters of concrete for a residential house.
And how much would that, so I guess it would make power needs intermittent, or what would it do? Like, would you run the power and then turn it off because you have enough, and then run off the battery, the capacitance, and then turn it back on to refill it? Or like, what would the pattern of energy usage look like?
The standard energy pattern would be like, if you imagine all-grid house, so you do not have to even connect your house to the grid. If you have solar panels that during the day can both slowly charge your your walls or concrete foundations and slabs, anything which is concrete, and then you would during the day use that solar energy for your appliances, at the same time charge your concrete elements, and then whenever the sun is gone during the night or cloudy days, then you can retrieve that energy stored in those construction elements, and as a result you won't need to rely on energy from outside.
Oh, so you could be totally self-sufficient?
Yes, definitely.
How much, like, if someone already has solar, I mean, I know they try not to undersize them, but how much does this help? Like, could I get away with half capacity solar because, as long as my house is big enough, this will add the rest? Or do I have to, like, how much would it offset my need for solar or my need for electricity if I don't use solar?
Frankly speaking, that offset on the solar panels wouldn't be much, because you would have to get that energy from solar. But the advantage is that overnight, when normally you would still have to get the energy from the grid and pay for that, then you wouldn't have to. You would basically use that energy that you store, because at this point you either have to use regular batteries, let's say different types of batteries that you can store in your garage that are compatible with your solar panels, but those are hazardous. You have to replace them every 10-15 years and you have to pay for them. So in this case, basically you avoid them, especially that, let's say in California, if I remember correctly, basically if you install solar panels, you need those also energy storage system. Otherwise it's hard to manage high energy discrepancy during the night and day if everyone would use, let's say, solar panels.
Okay, gotcha. So is this in production?
Unfortunately, not yet. At this point, we've tried to push this technology to at first on a lab bench, and then we got into collaboration with consortium of companies led by Aizawa in Japan, where basically we're able to produce over the last few months 1 meter cube prototype and composed of 4 columns that can reach up to 100 volts. So that was our recent objective, which was extremely successful. And then day by day, also we try to adapt this technology with those outside collaboration, industrial collaborations to push it forward. But still we need a small amount of time to basically be able to manufacture it at scale and make sure that all aspects of this technology, like durability, safety, are met and approved for those manufacturing purposes.
What about the slab for a slab built house? That's a big piece of concrete. Have you guys tried doping that to see if you make the entire slab conductive? Because it's also in contact directly with the ground.
Yes. Basically, any concrete element, whether it's a slab around your house or concrete blocks on the highway, can be converted to energy storing components. But on top of that, our technology can also be used for self-heating application, which actually greatly applies to the one you mentioned, because if you imagine every winter, whenever we have snow and ice, we have to deal with that. It creates risks and imposes us to put a lot of salt for de-icing, but that's usually still creates safety issues and so on. So our technology can basically, since concrete is electrically conductive, we leverage the fact that through that electrical resistivity and Joule effect, we can heat up that concrete slab. So as a result, 1 year ago, we were able to demonstrate a few meter long pavement in Odori Park in Japan and with that functionality, and it worked very well. So you can imagine that, let's say in the airport runways, you wouldn't have to de-ice or de-snow the airport runways. You could
just in your own home, you could do radiant heating from the floor if it's worked,
Yes, exactly. Because currently, mostly for radiant floor heating, you have to install water pipes. The installation is very expensive. You have water issues because of leakage and so on. And here, just your floor can heat up or your wall. So for radiant floor heating is also extremely useful.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, when do you think some of these applications are going to be in widespread use? Like how long and what's blocking them from getting there?
We are very optimistic. So we think that within the next few months, with industrial collaborations, we can push this technology. Like at least that self-heating application might be a bit quicker, just because it's a little bit simpler. While for energy storing applications, that application is a bit just slightly, I would say, more complex. And I would say what is missing, I would say first to like optimization of this material, because in our, let's say in our some other technologies, we have so much data set and data information that we can use AI machine learning and optimize the systems. But in our case, this is kind of new technology and there's limited just few years that we've been working on it. So at this point, all those machine learning algorithms, they don't have enough data to optimize them fully. Nevertheless, I think it's just a matter of months that we can push this technology forward and just make sure to run some remaining tests for those durability tests to prove that, if we design our concrete structures for sustainability structures for more than 50 years, we just want to make sure that we won't build those structural elements and concrete elements, and that energy storing functionality or self-heating functionality won't kind of degrade much quicker than that. The goal and the promise is to keep these both functionalities at the same time, especially since we are using supercapacitor architecture and not a battery one, which means that basically we do not have any chemical processes while charging and discharging our material. And as a result, in our supercapacitor architecture, usually degradation over time is very minimal. So that creates that promise that both functionalities can last together.
Right. You live together and it lasts long. Correct. Okay. Well, very good, Damian. Where can people find out more about your work and follow you?
So we have currently MIT Electron Conductive Carbon Concrete Hub. So MIT CSHub Hub has a website where we try to post any news, any newsletters. Also, we are present on LinkedIn. You can follow me through LinkedIn, Damian Stefaniuk, or our hub, MIT CSHub Hub. We are also sharing part of the work through MIT Concrete Sustainability Hub that has been with MIT for the last more than 15 years. And we have also MIT CSHub has YouTube channel. And of course, what we also recommend, we have two PNAS papers, one 2023 and the last one 2025, where you can find basically foundations, scientific foundations to prove the scalability and the promise of this technology. So I think all of these can give kind of a hint where we are at and where are we going towards.
Okay, well, very good. Well, Damian, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Richard, for one more time for having me.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.